Hey everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. I am just dropping this special little clip into all the episodes. So, no matter what episode you're listening to, this is actually pretty current as of July 2024. I wanted to come on here and just say a big thank you to Earworthy because the Life Shift podcast was just named the best overall podcast of the year in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. And you've probably seen some articles written about the Life Shift podcast before, written by Earworthy. And now he is launching from his online publication, he is launching these yearly winners of independent podcast awards. And these are specifically for indie podcasters. We are those that wear all the hats. We create the show. Some people write the show. We're producers, sound engineers. We troubleshoot all the tech. We do any kind of research if we need to. We host the shows. We distribute the shows. We do all the things that relate to our shows because we love it. And it's so nice to see my name in a list with some other amazing podcasts like Multispective, which won Best Life Lessons Podcast. Salad with a Side of Fries won Best Health Podcast. Bippity Boppity Business won Best Business Advice Podcast. And there are so many more. And so I just want to come on here and say thank you to Earworthy for not only doing these awards every year and just honoring some of us indie podcasters that sometimes feel like we're just shouting into the void, but we're not. We're just doing what brings us joy, and hopefully through that work it brings other people joy. In my case, for the Life Shift, I hope that each episode finds the ears that needed to hear it the most so that they feel a little less alone in their circumstance. But also, Earworthy writes all these amazing publications pretty much weekly, every week, every weekday, I should say, where he writes on Blogger, Medium, Substack, Tumblr, Vocal, Many Stories, and for other places. And he really just highlights the independent podcasters. So thank you, Frank, for everything you do with Earworthy and for recognizing all of us in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. If you'd like to read more, please head to medium.com/EAR hyphen WORTHY. Thanks again and enjoy this episode.
And I got an email saying, congratulations, you are now a patient of doctor's office. And I got a text on my phone. I looked down at my phone immediately after, and it was a text from my wife saying, and you're going. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't want to do this. I told you I didn't want to do this. Come to find out, that was the greatest moment of my life.
Today's guest and fellow Taylor Swift lover, Quin, shares his story of navigating conflicting dreams, family, depression, love, and mental health advocacy. His journey began with a dream of working in sports media, and he worked tirelessly to make it a reality in his life. He interned, he worked odd hours, and he even slept in his car in order to chase this dream. And eventually he landed his dream job, but as we all understand, it came at a cost, and he found himself working long hours and missing out on important moments with his family. His life took a turn when his wife became pregnant, and he had to choose between his dream job and his family. And he chose his family, but it was a difficult decision that left him bitter and possibly depressed. He struggled to adjust to his new life, and he found himself kind of in a fog, trying to find his way out. Throughout his journey, Danny has learned the importance of mental health and seeking help when we need it. He struggled with depression and anxiety, and he was kind of hesitant to seek help at first. However, his wife's persistence and support led him to find that help, and he's been able to manage since. Danny's story is a powerful reminder that life is full of twists and turns, and it's okay to change course if something doesn't feel right or it's not working. It's also a reminder that mental health is just as important as physical health, and seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Before we get into this episode, I want to thank my Patreon members for supporting this episode. If you want to join the community and get involved in the t-shirt giveaway and just provide some direct support, please check out patreon.com/The Life Shift Podcast for more information on all the different tiers. So, without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Danny as he shares his journey and the life shift that changed everything for him. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift. Candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with a brand new connection, Danny. Hey, Danny.
Hi, Matt. How's it going?
Should you want the real answer?
Always, yes.
Always the real answer. I'm fine. It's really hot, and
It,
I'm that doesn't make me too happy.
fine is good.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you being a part of the Life Shift podcast. As I talk to people throughout this journey, I find that there is a little element of everyone's story that anyone can really resonate with or connect with in some way. And sometimes I have listeners reach out and they're like, oh, so and so's episode, this particular part really stuck out to me. And I was like, I don't even remember that part. So it's so interesting to me how even something just innocuous that's just like there can stick with someone and affect them in a way that would be positive or maybe help them feel less alone. So I appreciate you wanting to come on here and share your journey and share your pivotal moment that has kind of turned you into a different person.
My pleasure. And I always say, and I've hear you say it pretty much every single episode is if it hits the ears of one person that needs it, that's my goal. It's kind of one of those things that I live by. Is my story. If my story impacts one person, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? You're a couple years younger than me, but I believe that growing up we were conditioned not to share a lot of the vulnerable or the parts that people deemed weak.
Absolutely, especially as men. Especially as men.
And now that we do it more, I think people do it more, and I certainly do it on this show as much as I can. I truly feel that it is one of my strengths is to show what used to be seen as a weakness that I used to want to hide, that I used to feel ashamed about. And so you're right. I think I say it every time, but it's true. If there is one person that hears your story and is like, "Oh, I didn't realize I wasn't the only person that's felt this way," we win.
Absolutely. I wrote a blog once and somebody said this inspired me to call my therapist and I dropped everything and I was like there it is. Those 1,000 words were worth it.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I actually posted on social media today about something that I don't think that I've shared too publicly in the past is since I was a kid, I faced disordered eating and issues around that. And for so long, I absorbed so much of that shame. And there is a power in just putting it out there and just being like, well, now everyone knows. And I don't have to spend the extra energy keeping it in. And so that's what all these stories are about to me is just like, let's let it out because sometimes telling our story selfishly is helpful to us.
It is therapeutic.
And you do that. You have a podcast as well, and you talk about things that are tough,
Yes,
correct?
yeah. Yeah, so I host the Mental Health Role Models podcast and
Is that about mental health?
just a smidgen. And actually that was inspired by I was at NBC Sports. There was an anchor, Trenny Kuznarek, wonderful human being, and she actually was part of an article in Milwaukee Magazine, and they wanted to go over a bunch of random stuff, and turned the article on its head and said, "Actually, I'd like to talk about mental health." She spoke about her struggles with mental health and how it impacted her life, her career, and I don't know. There was just something about it that kind of hit me, and I actually had a conversation with her, and I essentially said coined it to myself the mental health role models because it's very much it changes your mentality if you see a celebrity or someone who's on TV or someone who just looks like they have it all. Somebody in that boat that is kind of being vulnerable and showing that side that you wouldn't see that's behind the curtains. And it really impacted me and that was my motivation for creating that podcast was to kind of remind people that there are these role models out there that you can kind of just look to real quick. It's whether it's somebody like Matt that's talking about these huge life changes that people are having, or somebody who has lived with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and just to be like, hey, talking about it helps. You are not alone, and having that role model out there.
Well, I mean, just in that example, you've explained the power of storytelling because you read that article and you were inspired to do something And through that, what you're doing is now helping other people. So who knows what they've taken from your show to like implement in their own lives to help other people. So it's this butterfly effect that just keeps on going. And so that's why I'm so happy that I feel like in the last 10 years people are being a little bit more open, a little bit more real, if you will. I don't want to use the word authentic because everyone hates it, but I think people are being a little bit more human, a little bit more real.
That kind of was a big part of my life shift, was being open and honest about it. And it started, like, my journey started back when I was like 16, had anxiety, depression, had no idea what it was because it was just kind of, like you said, something taboo that we never spoke about. And I just kind of sucked it up and rolled with it. It's definitely something I've lived with, and now I have lived to tell it. So
Well, yeah, maybe you can kind of paint the picture of what your life was like leading up to this moment, that this watershed moment maybe that really kind of changed things for you, because I think there's a lot of things that people can relate to in probably what you're going to share about your upbringing as well.
absolutely. So a lot of my journey started when I was in high school. I wanted to go into sports media, and I it's a cool job, right? It's covering things that are interesting. And my parents always preached to me, do what you love. So when I was in college, I set my sights on sports media, and I would not let it go. So I started interning at Comcast Sportsnet New England, which later became NBC Sports Boston. I interned there, fell in love. It was the greatest thing I could do. I was interning as well as working at a retirement community at the time.
Got to pay the bills.
Exactly. When my internship ended, I went full time back to the retirement community, and I was working just obnoxious hours just to pay, as you said, pay the bills. And then I actually met my wife in college, and she very much understood that I was nose down, wanted to do this. We got married, we bought a house, kind of everything was falling into place. I got that full-time job in sports media, worked my butt off because it was, for anybody who's gotten into that industry, it's very much a, how do I describe it? It's like chipping away at a rock. It's okay. I got these set hours, or I got these random hours. Hey, I'm gonna pick up one more here, one more here, one more here. It's all over the place. So what I was doing was I was working full time at the retirement community for hours, and I was chipping away, doing shifts here, basically taking whatever my boss could give me. I was sleeping in my Jeep. I was working 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the retirement community, and then I was working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. at NBC Sports. And it was the dream. It was all about fighting for that dream. And so I got an opportunity to work in the 2014 Olympics as I was still doing the part-time, full-time madness. I actually went away for 30 days, which was hard on my wife and I. It was okay. This is the first time I've gone away for this long since we've been married. And when I came back, my boss, Art Martone, passed away last year. Huge inspiration for me, huge, great mentor. Basically, just wanted me to stick with it as much as I could. Knew I had a future in that industry, and so I came back, and he offered me a full time position. And so I was able to finally quit my job at the retirement home, move full time into sports, and it was everything I ever dreamed of. And my wife got pregnant, and so it's like, okay, I have the job, I have the wife, I have the son on the way. I like to compare it, the song Brandy by Looking Glass. Brandy, you're a fine girl, my love, my lady is the sea. My true love, and I didn't know it at the time, was my obsession with sports and working in sports. And I basically said to myself, oh, I can have the wife, I can have the sea, I can have it all. I couldn't. So I was working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., waking up at 3 with a newborn. That's no way to live. I was depressed, I was frustrated, I was angry. I wasn't even enjoying my job that I enjoyed anymore. and
You were just tired,
I was
which probably caused a lot of
exhausted,
that.
exhausted.
Yeah.
So then I had an opportunity to do another Olympics, the Rio Olympics in 2016. My wife actually got pregnant again, and we were thrilled. We were over the moon. And so I actually left for a month when my son Brady was like 4 days old, which took a toll on me and took a toll on my wife. And basically, I don't she never said the words, "You need to choose," but I was getting all the signals at home that you kinda have to choose us or this. I chose the family, and I walked away from my dream career, or so I thought, that I slept in my car, I did, like, these crazy things for. I walked away, and I very much was bitter about it. I was bitter towards my wife, I was bitter towards my family. Little did I know I was depressed and I didn't get it. My wife's like, "You need to see someone," and I was like, "No, I don't need to see anyone. I'm fine.
Yeah, you made me do this.
You made me do this. This was your decision." And so I was working a job. I mean, I love the people there, but the job was not for me. And one day I got and this is where my life shift begins, which is funny because I thought for the longest time I thought my life shift was leaving sports. This email I got from a doctor's office. I didn't have a primary care at the time. I didn't want to. So I didn't have a doctor, and I got an email saying, "Congratulations. You are now a patient of doctor's office." And I got a text on my phone. I looked down at my phone immediately after, and it was a text from my wife saying, "And you're going." And I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't want to do this. I told you I didn't want to do this. Come to find out that was the greatest moment of my life.
This email was like kind of like this shifting moment. Let's go back a little bit because what you describe is something that I talk to a lot of people about. And if you've listened to any of the episodes, you've probably also heard me say this checklist life feeling of because when you were describing, you're like, I got it. I got the wife, I got the kid, I got the job, I got the dream job. I did all the right things. And then when we grew up, we were told if you do all those things, that equals happiness, that equals success. And what you found is that it really you weren't happy. You were like fighting. Did you find in these moments that you had to convince yourself that you were happy about, working in that space and being so tired? Like, no, I love this. Like you were trying to convince yourself because on paper everything was making the check marks, but life was really tough.
Honestly, every day I was driving about an hour and 15 minutes to the studio every day. Those were the longest rides of my life, let me tell you. It was silence. Sometimes I wouldn't even turn on the radio and I just listened to my thoughts, and there was a night that when I decided to walk away, and I put in my notice, and I decided to walk away, and I parked on the side of the road on the busiest highway at 2 a.m. I opened the door and I considered stepping out into traffic because I thought I failed. I thought I failed my family. I thought I failed myself. I thought I failed that mission. Like, I thought I failed that checklist. Like, I had it. I had it all. I had everything that I dreamed of, and I literally tore it up and I walked away. But it was that moment that the moment that my wife scheduled that appointment, that it was like, no, I didn't have it all. I really didn't have it all. I had a shell of what I thought I wanted. And once I went to the doctor, and they gave they we started trying medications, and it was like, "Oh crap, this is how I'm supposed to feel." Like, I always thought that I felt 100%. I thought I was myself, and I have this conversation with people on the podcast all the time that it's like, yeah, I when I started taking medication, or I had the idea of taking medication that I didn't want to be myself, or I wanted to be myself, and I didn't want to like water myself down with medication. Well, it's funny that revelation when you start taking medication and you're like, wow, this is who I am.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of the things that you're describing are very conditional. They're society's conditions that we somehow absorb. Like even just like if you go for your dream, you have it, and like you feel like guilty that you're not happy about it because at some point in your life you absorb that like this is what you should do and this is what's going to make you happy. And I also was thinking too earlier when you were talking about like you had your dream home life, right? You had this wife, you had your children or child, and then another child on the way, and then you had this dream of being in sports and media, and like these two dreams were conflicting. They were like punching each other in the face every day, and now you kind of had to decide, and then you were mad about it. But like, what if you had stayed? You probably would have lost the other dream, right? You know, this family part, or you would have lost the value that you saw in that because you moved towards this particular dream. Have you ever thought about, what that road would have looked like?
Uh, I would be miserable and alone, like, and I think that that's I try not to think about it, but because it is very much like I can't imagine my life without my kids. I can't I love being a dad. I love being like I love everything. My son got into hockey this year. My other son got into baseball, and it's everything to me. Everything. And like now I'm in a place where my boss values family and values that time away from the office. And she she reminds me all the time. I got yelled at the other day. She's like, "Hey, it is 5:05. Go have dinner with your family." And it's like, "All right, fine, I will."
And it's sometimes some part of that too is just like us growing up and realizing what truly is important in our lives, and the thing that we held on to as 15-year-olds that we always wanted to be XYZ. That was the thing when we were 15, right? But then we held on to it for so long because we glamorize it. We make it this end all be all. And you worked your tail off and you got there.
Right,
And then you were like, oh, wait, maybe it's not that great.
right. And it's still funny because behind me is my Emmy award for my work in the Rio Olympics. My wife still to this day calls it the real love of my life, just because of the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into that. And it really is it's a symbol to me. It's a reminder of, hey, I didn't put in that work for nothing. Like, I didn't walk away with nothing. I walked away with something that a lot of people work their entire careers for. And so, like, and my wife reminds me about it all the time whenever I kinda, like, have one of those moments of, like, "What if I didn't walk away?" She said, like, and she reminds me that it wasn't wasted. I have those memories. I got to cover 3 Super Bowls, a World Series, and 2 Olympic Games. And I think it's a really cool reminder that I it wasn't wasted time.
Yeah, and the irony of it is that you got this gold Emmy statue, the gold Olympics. That was like maybe you are, that professional Olympian that retired after the Olympics, and you did your thing, you got your gold and you walked away. And I think there's certainly something to celebrate there because it blood, sweat and tears like you said, and no sleep, and is sleeping in your car, and things that other people couldn't even imagine doing. So there's definitely something to celebrate there. And I'm sure it taught you a lot. And I'm sure it also, I'll ask you, did it teach you things that you'll never do again?
Yes, absolutely. I think it, and I preach this to I spoke to my a bunch of students at my alma mater a few years ago, and I say it's okay to have a dream, but you need to know where that line is. That it's that it's okay, and it's okay to walk away. It's okay to have that moment that it's like, all right, it's a fork in the road. It's not it's not a crash into a wall. It's a fork in a road you have to choose. In my experience, it was almost a do or die. That if I didn't walk away, it I wouldn't have made it.
Do you feel like you were operating like in a fog, trying to get out of the fog to find that shiny thing on the other side of the fog?
100%. And I think that's why that phone call that my wife made is that life shift for me. Is once I started kind of understanding the way my brain works and the way depression, anxiety works, that was kind of finding my step outside of that fog. Once I kind of had that clarity on what was stopping my brain from doing what it should be doing. I actually had a conversation with somebody was also in the sports business, and I reached out. It was kind of a happenstance thing. I swear to this day that he accidentally friended me on LinkedIn, and I reached out and I said, "Hey, I'm just curious what it was like for you leaving the industry. I'm having a difficult time." And he said to me, he's like, "No matter what you're doing, remember you are a storyteller." He's like, "You spent that part of your life telling stories about rich people playing a game. And now you need to find that your next story." And that was huge for me because at the time I was working in a manufacturing place and I was talking about metal boxes at the time I was in marketing. And so I was like, "All right, I need to find my next story." So that's where I landed at UMass Memorial, and now I get to tell these amazing stories about caregivers and patients who are doing amazing things every single day.
I think it's interesting to think about how much you should applaud your ability to actually go to that doctor's appointment, to actually open up enough to let someone else help, right? Because it sounded like you were kind of like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm just mad, like everything's fine. I'll figure this out. But there's a lot of strength in allowing other people to help. Were you ever anti-help in those areas before that? Or were you willing?
I think I definitely was not willing. Um, I I think it came down to, okay, do I trust my wife? Do I trust her in this situation? And my friend Olivia from the Fresh Starts actually says to me, she's like, that's an amazing testament to the strength of our marriage, that we not only made it through this insane time, but the fact that when I in a moment that I didn't trust her, in a moment that I was angry with her and she was angry with me, that I just said, "All right, I'll do something I'm not comfortable with so that we can survive this." And I in that moment I didn't realize how much that was going to help not just me because I thought she was more thinking about me, but how much it was going to help me, her, our marriage, our parenting, like everything.
Well, it also shows a lot of love, right? If there's someone in which you're mad at her, she's mad at you because you're mad at her, and all the things that maybe you weren't able to do because you were pouring every ounce of your being into your job and the things that you were going away to do because that was your dream. It shows a lot that she moved out of that space enough to find you help that she knew you needed and maybe you didn't know you needed just yet. There's it's a very selfless act. I'm sure there's a benefit to you doing that for her, but at the same time, when someone's mad and someone's in this anger space, it's really hard to show that love, I think. And so there's something to be celebrated there in the fact that that's a very tough thing to make someone that's not in a great space go to something like that and be like and do it from a loving space.
I think the most ironic part of all of it is later that year my wife was pregnant with our daughter.
Just keep coming.
We were on the Olympic plan for a little while there. So we were having a daughter and my wife was unbelievably depressed. She was having the hardest time, and I actually did the same thing to her that she did to me. I scheduled her an appointment. I texted her. I said, "You're going." And she just replied, "I hate you," smiley face. So so she ended up doing the same thing, and then she got on medication, and she said to me, she's like, "I owe it to you. Like, if you didn't call, I would have just suffered in silence."
And you're like, ditto.
So it's funny, we now have this marriage that we're both medicated for anxiety, depression, and it's funny because one thing that I hear on my podcast talking to people is they think it's kind of, I don't want to say cool, but admirable that we are both kind of in that boat, and we're both open and honest about it. And I was like, well, we kind of have to be, because
You don't have
if
to.
well, I mean, if my wife's having a bad day in terms of her anxiety, depression, I have to be able to identify it and be that shoulder to lean on, and vice versa. So I think it's an interesting road, but it's something, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, it's a human experience, and it's off of the quote unquote checklist that we were prescribed when we were children, and we grew up in that space of, like when we were kids. Like you even mentioned it, you said that, I don't know if you knew it in the moment, but looking back, that you were had some depression and some anxiety as a teenager. Was that something that was ever discussed out loud, or was that just more something you reflecting on?
Absolutely not. Yeah, it was just something. It was definitely not diagnosed when I was younger. I mean, like, I I think it's, talking to a friend of mine the other day. It was my We were talking about their child being diagnosed with ADHD, and he said back when we were kids, there was no ADHD diagnosis. We were just the crazy kids. And I think that's kind of, it's an interesting kind of development over the last few years, is we have these diagnoses that people our generation weren't being diagnosed with it. It was, well, he's just sad, or he's just mopey, or something like that. So, like, no, it's definitely just kind of something I've realized when now that I'm kind of more educated about my mental health and others' mental health and the way the brain works, is like, I look back and it's just like, wow, I wish I knew back then, because I could have done something.
Yeah. So you were not aware, even in that moment on that highway. Did you know that you were depressed? Did you know that you were facing anxiety about this whole situation?
No, I think
That you were just mad?
I was just mad, I was just upset, I was just frustrated, I just thought, like I said, I thought I just failed. It was, I labeled myself a failure, and, obviously, like, now looking back on it, it was, well, yeah, that's a very much a symptom of anxiety, depression, and I think that's hard. It's hard to identify yourself. I mean, I talk to people pretty regularly about, like, they speak about, okay, I was feeling this way, and then hearing you talk about that you were feeling this way, and that's kind of very much goes back to the mental health role models. Is just me talking about it with some friends, like, oh yeah, I'm not just big sad. I'm experiencing something that is part of me. I know it's part of me, but being able to identify it as part of me, part of you, part of anybody, I think that's the tricky part.
Yeah. And it's interesting, once we're aware of it, how we can name each part of it and honor it in a way, and kind of, I don't want to say celebrate it, but see it as just part of us. And that is something that we navigate this world with. And that's okay. Because for so long, we were told it's not okay. Like, oh, you don't, why are you depressed? You have this career that you've always wanted. You have this family. You have this house. What reasons do you have to be depressed? Right. Like that was the older people in our lives telling us that stuff. And you're like, well, no, that's not what this is about. This is a brain chemistry thing. This is something that is pretty much out of my control. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I what always makes me chuckle is I when I started at UMass Memorial, I kind of had it in my head. I was like, all right, I want to, if I have the opportunity, I want to talk about this, and I want to be able to kind of open that door for other people and say, like, hey, are you feeling this way? Let's walk this way. Let's talk to somebody. We have a blog for our company, the Simply Well blog, and I approached the person who runs it, and I said, hey, do we ever write about mental illness? And she's like, no, I've never done it. And I was like, I'm going to write you something about depression and anxiety in my journey. And she's like, oh, that's very brave of you. And I was like, "Well, I mean, it's something I talk about. It's me. It's I wear it like a badge of honor."
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so I wrote it. It was 1,000 words of basically me pouring my heart out onto a page and explaining how my journey and where I am, where I was, and I was applauded for it by my colleagues, and I don't want to say I just played it off, but like it like I said, it's part of me, and I'm want to be that mental health role model that somebody needs.
And you never know who read it and now feels okay about sharing it with other people.
Absolutely.
Like we said earlier, sharing it that first time or putting that out that first time is like, it can be overwhelming. It can be like, what is the world going to think of me? Like, who am I now? And you're like, well, I'm just me. Like, nothing's changed. I've always had this, like I've always dealt with this, but now I can name it. Now I can do something about it. I can, in your case, take medication that helps you feel more you, right? And be this productive human in a way that you want to be now instead of the way maybe you felt others thought you should be. Do you feel that you're living a more real life leaning into the things that really do bring you joy now compared to before, whereas sports was your dream, but does life bring you more joy now?
Absolutely, and, it's funny, like, with talking about medication, I've spoken to people, and it's like, "Well, was it a quick fix?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely not." It was a long and frustrating road, kind of finding that right medication, that right balance. I think it took over a year to find what was actually working, but boy, when you find something that's actually working, it really it's that clarity walking out of the like you referenced earlier, that walking out of the fog, kind of being able to find who you truly are rather than who you thought you should truly be.
Well, who are you now that you have this more clarity? Like, who would you say you are?
I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I'm a dad, a husband first, and everything else falls behind. My priorities. Oh man, my priorities are in upside down from what they were.
And it sounds like you're telling the stories that really matter now. Not
Hmm.
that the other ones didn't matter, but to that random connection on LinkedIn at first, to their point, you're telling the stories that matter and not just the stories of like really super rich people that no one can really relate to in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and it's funny because when he first said that, the storyteller thing, I interpreted it as a job, like find a job that you're a storyteller. It kinda carried over. Like, it kinda carried over to other parts of my life that, okay, I'm a storyteller, I'm gonna tell my story. I'm gonna tell my story, it's gonna make a difference, which then will inspire others to tell their story. It's kinda like I opened the book and I started writing. Now others are writing their chapters.
Do you think that the journey that you went on with the high highs, low lows, and all the fog in between, do you think those aspects make you a better storyteller now to help other people?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd say yes. I think I I I very much believe everything I went through was to make me me, and without finding me, there would be no there would be no mental health role models. There would be no I probably wouldn't have a family. Like if I didn't well, I mean I would have a family, but they would probably be living somewhere else. And but yeah, I I don't know if I don't know if I answered your question, but
There's no right or wrong answer. I just think that, these experiences probably allow you to connect to a deeper well, if you will, a deeper source of energy, a deeper source of something that can make you more empathetic to people that you're writing about for your company or on those blogs, or, whatever kind of stories that you're telling for these people that are in is probably the worst parts of their lives, right? And trying to find some kind of words is probably a lot easier now. I almost see this, and forgive me if this is offensive, but I almost see it as the hard work and all the time and effort and energy that you were putting into chasing that dream. You were almost running away from the subconscious pieces of the depression, of the anxiety, of the things that like were really supposed to fill your cup, but it was like that's a lot of work. So I just need to keep running and doing these things to kind of push that away. And now that you were kind of forced, or you chose to stop, in anger, but then you were forced to sit with it and you were forced to figure it out. Now everything's catching up and you're able to kind of put everything together to make you that more empathetic storyteller for the people around you that need that now from you.
Can you be my therapist? That was like that. I think in this like last half hour, you just like diagnosed my entire life.
I don't, I just, I think people born in the 80s and 90s, I think we were very much conditioned that we just need to keep running. Just keep doing and running and succeeding and achieving and getting promoted and doing all these things because that will equal success. But then when everyone that I talk to that's in our age groups stops for a second, everything catches up, and then we're forced to sit with all the things that we were running away from because we weren't allowed to, like you weren't allowed as a teenager to actually think, oh, I'm not just quote unquote crazy. I have something that's going on. And if you were able to sit with that back then, imagine what that journey would have looked like. It may not have been as colorful, right, as it was. It would have been different, I think.
I think that's the interesting thing to look back on is like how would things have been different? Like how would I have if I wasn't terrified of going off to college, would I have gone somewhere else? Then if I had gone somewhere else, would I have not met my wife? Would I have gone a different path? And it's very much it's it's like a multiverse that type thing. Like where would Dan have gone if I was born in 1998 when it was a little more acceptable to figure out, okay, this
Was it?
is yeah, that's true. That's true.
Maybe 2008.
Yeah, we'll go with 2008. That like in a time where it was more acceptable to talk about these things. And like I think that's the tricky part for me when I look back is like I grew up in a house that like my mom was willing to talk to me. Like and she always says to me like I feel bad that we didn't talk more about this, and it's like, "Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going through my head.
And
I
she
didn't."
probably didn't either.
Exactly. And she's like, "I wish I knew." And it's like I didn't know. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what I was going through. So, I think the looking in the past is just so it's so tricky, and that's kind of why I have started kind of just living off the okay, yesterday is yesterday, let's just move forward, and what did I do yesterday? Well, let's improve on it.
Well, yesterday's the past.
Yeah, man.
But, and I have a very similar experience, right? I lost my mom when I was 8, and the people around me didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I was 8. The people around me didn't know what to do. They were older, but nobody was talking about how do you help an 8-year-old grieve? Like, how do you do that? And so, yeah, I can go down that muddy road of thinking, like, what if they had the tools? What if they had the tools to help me? Where would I be now? And then I think if I had struggled for so long to go through that grieving process of my mom, if my mom hadn't died, like what, like we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I probably would have been a different person completely because I didn't have all those struggles. And in a weird way, those struggles made me who I am, your struggles, and that, every element of your journey has made you who you are now and allows you to tell the stories that you tell and do the podcast and have the relationship that you do have with your wife and your kids, and so you're right, there's nothing we can do about looking at the past, but it's also interesting to think, if you had identified depression and anxiety as a teenager and got your medication then and had the clarity that you have now, maybe you wouldn't have worked so dang hard to do those things, and then you wouldn't have had the Olympic experience or the, Super Bowl experiences and all these other pieces that came with it. And so you're right. Well, I look back, but at the same time, it's always interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Well, now I'm gonna have to. Now I'm gonna have to.
It's from the 90s, and I think it's from the 90s, maybe early 2000s, but essentially it's the movie starts out and she misses a train, then it splits, and then she got the train in a different multiverse, if you will. And the whole movie shows just that one thing, how her entire life would have changed just from missing the train. And so it's the same thing in anyone's case. And that's why the life shift itself, just the idea of the life shift, to me, it's like it's one thing. If your wife had not, like, that day she just wanted to stay pissed at you and didn't want to let love win,
Mm-hmm.
or if she called a different doctor's office and they're like, sorry, we don't have it, like, there's a lot of little decisions that people have made that bring us to these points. And it's just always so interesting to dissect it.
Yeah, and so it's funny because when I was originally talking to you about potentially having my episode, I very much had it in my head. Okay, my life shift was leaving sports,
Mm-hmm.
and then I kind of drew out my whole story, and you're like, oh, I love that the life shift was your wife making that call, and I was like, oh my god, that is like that like that's it. Like I thought my life shift was leaving the dream job, but in fact the life shift was what saved everything that's around me now.
That one phone call, and you're just like, what if it was busy?
Oh yeah.
Like, it's just it's so crazy to think how life unfolds in that way. And maybe it was always supposed to unfold this way, and that's kind of this predestined thing. But I think it creates these layers to you, to me, to all of us, when we have things like this, when we have these struggles. Because in my opinion, my version of my life is so much richer because of that. I wish it was financially richer,
Well,
but
yeah, we all
other
do.
than that, it's so, I feel like in my 40s now, having gone through what I went through with my mom and then forever failing at that, but then getting the relationship that I was able to create with my grandmother because my mom died, and then finishing the grieving of my mother. Finishing is the word that everyone hates, but getting a hold of the grief journey of my mother at the point that I did, right before my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, also allowed me to grieve that process and her end appropriately. And, so everything kind of like worked out. And sometimes we panic about things not working out, and they all seem to work out in the end, even though in the moment they can seem so dire.
Well, it now that you say that, like, it reminds me that I even said to my wife once, I was like, "What if I went to NBC and I lived that dream, I lived those downs, those ups, everything to meet my mental health role model?" So then I could learn that, okay, it's okay to talk about this. Like I think that's the intriguing, as like the run Lola run, multiple scenarios kind of situation is like, okay, if I never went there, I never would have figured out that it is okay to talk about this. I never would have lived that experience, and I probably would have to this day just said, oh yeah, I'm just grouchy today. Like, but instead I'm walking a different path. I'm walking a path that shows others that it's okay to walk it.
I see your journey as two dream wins, and two things that I think a lot of people would be, jealous is the wrong word, but would be thankful to have. You had two dreams and you've achieved both of these dreams in a way that was maybe more circuitous and not exactly the way you would draw out on paper as a teenager. But truly, you were able to do the things that many people dream about doing, and you made it happen. You made it happen. You sacrificed for that. But then you sacrificed for the other dream. And you win that. The other dream of having this family, having your wife and your kids, and you sacrifice for that in a totally different way by not giving up the other dream, by walking away or taking a left, or the fork in the road gave you this opportunity to go there. And so I think it's something to be celebrated, even though it was really hard and messy.
I love that. I mean, I have no words for that. I think I just think it's such a cool point of view. Like I never would have thought of that. Like in that way that it's two separate dreams and that other people haven't been able to experience. So I appreciate that.
I think we get stuck in sometimes we get stuck in our head. You might relate to this, in how you feel. I've faced depression and anxiety, never been diagnosed with that, but I'm well aware of how I feel different in different times. But I think we get stuck in this catastrophe phase in our heads of these things, and how everything feels so like, oh, everything's broken. I can't I need to be able to fix this. Like, this is my fault. I need to do this. But if you step away, like me seeing you, these are all wins. Yeah, there were some pretty shitty times. But end of day, you win as a human. You win because of all the things that it's taught you. I I wholeheartedly believe that, whether you want to or not, different. But I see from my perspective, I see this as a win. I see this journey as a win because of where it got you and the things you got to do along the way. So cool. And so I mean, I appreciate you sharing that story and being so open about some of the struggles that you may have had.
Absolutely, and I asked or I had my 6-year-old son Brady ask me the question that I dreaded for the longest time, and it was so easy to answer that question. I never thought it would be, but it was so easy. When he realized, okay, because now that he's falling in love with hockey, he said, "Daddy, you covered the Bruins. You got to watch games for your job. Why would you leave that? Why would you stop doing that?" And I said, "Because if I was still doing that, I wouldn't get to watch my favorite hockey player play. That's you." And he just gave me the biggest hug, and that's I think of that, and that just it makes me smile, and it reminds me that why I'm doing what I do, or why I did what I did, and why I'm walking where I am now.
And you think back to the person that was fighting so hard to get that role and get that position, and that person probably wouldn't have said that at that time, right? Like my future kid kind of thing. And now you have the wherewithal to like feel fully confident in that response too, and not just like
It was the easiest answer I've ever answered in my life, and
and heart filled.
and when I left sports, I was like, "Oh god," like, cause I mean, imagine having the idea, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to career day when my kids are older, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm doing this," and that was kinda one of the moments that it was like, yeah, it was cool, but I wouldn't be here doing this with you right now if I was still doing that.
And the secret is that your kid it would be super cool whatever kind of job you went to career day to talk about, because your kid would be like, my dad is here and my dad is sharing this. And so, at the end of the day, our jobs are what they are, but they don't make us. They don't make us. And I think for a lot of us, we thought they would. We thought that that's what
Well,
would
we were
be.
raised to that. We were raised to believe that, like, okay, do something that you love, do this, do that, make lots of money doing what you love, and I think that was what led me down that road, and now I get it's funny because I never pictured myself working at a hospital, and now I work at a hospital. I got to ride in Life Flight. I got to a few weeks ago, a patient at the Children's Medical Center, he was going to miss graduation, so we brought graduation to him. like things like that. It just it really puts my when I think about it myself, it puts my journey in perspective, that it's like, okay, I still get to tell these awesome stories and it's still pretty freaking cool.
Well, and your journey helps you tell those stories. I think there's a lot of your journey that makes you who you are. I mean, it is who you are. If this version of Danny could go back to the one that was, getting ready to quit because he was mad and he felt like he had to, and is there anything that this version of him could tell him? Tell the other version of you?
Oh man, it gets better. It You can forge a new path and make it just as enjoyable, and you will. Like it's there's pros and cons to everything. And if you try and pick out the pros and cons of everything, you can't, like, and this is part of my anxiety. It's like I say, I joke around at work all the time, and I say my anxiety is my superpower, because I'm thinking about the pros and cons of every single thing before I press publish. And so, okay, two, 2012, 2013, 2014, Dan, like this, you're looking at things from a certain lens. Change your perspective. Don't don't look at it don't look at it through tunnel vision. Look at it from a full lens that you can see everything. And I think that's the big thing I would say is just look at it from every perspective. Don't just look at it from the one that you want to live.
Right. And the pros list is probably exists, and for that version of you it was all cons at the time, right? You'd probably also want to drop him the name of the medication that you found that
Oh,
works really well, so you don't have to go through that.
fluoxetine club, guys.
Myself, in my, I want to say, my late 20s, I went on that journey of trying to find a medication, and it
It's
was
hard.
the most miserable thing that I had ever done, because you're just like, and you got to like gradually put it in, and then you got to wean off of it, and then you got to find the next one. I eventually got to the point where I was just trying to find something to mask, and what I really needed was the talk therapy. And so that I actually left the venture of finding medication and was able, fortunately, to use the talk therapy to actually figure out what that deep-seated thing was. So I was fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I mean, when you find it, keep going. It's like therapy or medication. Keep going until you find the one that works and the thing that works.
It was wild because it was okay, the first one made me feel better, but I was dizzy. And then so they were like, "Well, if we add this and subtract this, that," and then it was like, "Okay, let's try it." And then that made me angry at everything. And then my wife's
That's
like,
not
"Oh,
good.
hell no, you're not doing this." And then they tried another thing and another combination, and then they tried the fluoxetine, which I'm on now, and they're like, okay, let's try this dose, and then this dose, and then this dose. And it really, it makes a whole world of a difference. I mean, I still have hard days, like it
Because you're human.
right, exactly. It doesn't, and this is the misconception about medication, is it's gonna take everything away. It's gonna make me a robot. No, it's not gonna make me a emotionless robot. It's going to take away, like, my peaks and valleys were just like this. Well, if now that I'm on medication, like I'm just kind of a nice smooth, like kind of, normal.
Lessen the peaks, and like,
Exactly.
just make everything a little less extreme when they go to
Exactly.
those other ends. And I think that's important for people to hear. I also think it's important to be proud that you have found something that works for you, that makes you feel more human, that makes you feel more like you. I think that's an important message for people to take away.
I just think there's the stigma against medication. Like I think it's stupid. I think,
We take medication for other things.
yeah, exactly. If my knee hurts, I'm not gonna not take ibuprofen. Like I'm gonna take that. Like if so I just view it from that angle, as like there's this stigma against medication that it's like, oh, he's on meds. Like, no, no, it has nothing to do with it. It's literally evening me out. Like, I'm not all over the place. Like, I'm not hyper out of my soul. I'm not depressed. Like it just, like I said, it takes away those peaks and valleys.
It normalizes everything a little bit more if we're thinking of an audio wave. We're normalizing those peaks and valleys. And, I think the stigma is lessening. I think the stigma is lessening about seeking help for mental health and embracing that and being more vulnerable. I think those stigmas are lessening. We have a long way to go, but it's stories like yours and stories like other people on the life shift that hopefully are impacting. Like you pointed out, finding the set of ears that needed to hear your story is our goal. And if we did it, then we win, then we've helped one other person, and imagine what they can do for other people beyond that. So thank you for sharing your story. If people want to connect with you and listen to your podcast or chat with you on Twitter, is there where would you like people to go?
Oh, I'm always on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at DQ for you, as well as Instagram. I'm there if you want to see my kids. Uh, and then my podcast is Mental Health Role Models. You can find it anywhere you search or listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, things like that.
We will include all of those links in the show notes for anyone that wants to connect with you. I can't help but think of Dairy Queen when I see your Twitter handle, and it makes me kind of hungry. So, with that, I'm going to maybe think about a blizzard tonight and enjoy that. Maybe they'll sponsor the podcast. Hey, Dairy Queen.
Yeah, I actually have friends who still call me Blizzard, so you're not the only one.
All right. Well, thank you for being a part of this show, Danny.
Appreciate you, Matt. Thank you.
And if you're listening, please just take a moment to do a little rating and review. Danny understands. We love that. And we don't know what it does really, but it feels good when we get them. So thank you for that. And until next week, I hope you have a wonderful week, but we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Thanks again, Danny.
My pleasure. Thank you, Matt.
For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.